Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this artist talk hosted by the Institute for Electronic Arts. My name is Miranda Metcalf, and I'm the director of the IEA. Before we begin, I would like to consciously and intentionally recognize, acknowledge, and honor that Alfred University sits on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Onondaga, or Great Hill people. With a proud and rich history of the Seneca Nation of Indians, also known as the Keepers of the Western Door, they are the largest and westernmost of the 6 nations that constitute the Haudenosaunee Confederacy of Nations, a democratic government that predates the United States Constitution. Today it is my delight to introduce this afternoon's speaker, D.B. Amarin. D.B. is an artist who explores audiovisual nonlinearity as a container for intersectional experiences. He frequently emphasizes the generative role of error as an opportunity for creation, resulting in media-centered projects driven by DIY methodologies, lo-fi translations, and persistent, inquisitive experimentation with available materials. His work has garnered awards from esteemed organizations, including the Oregon Arts Commission, the Ford Family Foundation, Regional Arts and Culture Council, the Andy Warhol Foundation for Visual Arts, and the Calligram Foundation. His visual art and curatorial programming have been exhibited internationally at A4 Arts Foundation, the Imaginative Film and Media Arts Festival, Luggage Store Gallery, Soundwave 7 Biennial, PICA, Portland Museum of Art, Oregon Contemporary, the Honolulu Museum of Art, and the Honolulu Biennial in 2019. He's been with us since April 8th through our Artist in Residency program, which is supported by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation, the New York State Council for the Arts, the Shine Joseph Endowment, the School of Art and Design, and the Department of Expanded Media at the New York State College of Ceramics. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming D.B.
Thank you so much, IEA, Miranda, and Bernard, for being so welcoming to your beautiful campus. I've been kind of holed up on a laptop in a cave for the last couple of days, but I'm really looking forward to seeing more of the campus and seeing what everyone else is creating. And thank you all for coming and hearing me speak about my work. I usually do this thing where I try to catch everyone up and do like a lifetime mashup of everything I've ever done. But that's only successful like half of the time. So I'm gonna try something different this time and kind of focus on the work that I've been doing most recently around the Pacific region. So today I'm gonna talk to you about how some of my recent work in experimental media has historically used glitch aesthetics and nonlinearity itself as a container for intersectional experience, both personal and cultural. But first, let me screen a work that has kind of served as a foregrounding, a work entitled X-Roots Big Signal. This is a work about oceanic diaspora. It was first shown in January 2018 as part of the Tropical Disturbance Group show of global Hawaii-based artists at Luggage Store Gallery in San Francisco, California, curated by Trisha Lagasso-Goldberg. The show aimed to problematize what was meant by local when we refer to people, places, and issues relevant to the lived experience in Hawaii, as well as redefining a sense of place in the Hawaiian Islands. I used this premise as a way to investigate my own heritage as an Afakasi Samoan from my mother's side and Azorian Portuguese, another remote island chain in the Atlantic. I'm interested in the unique frame of reference that diasporic identity manifests and how it can be translated visually. There's a specific type of dysphoria that emanates from an island and lingers in its people, a sensation permanently embedded in one's genetic material. These ontological tensions the dysphoria points to, and how that can be translated as a media experience, is something that guides this piece and my current explorations. In 2017, I flew to the Azores for a week collecting footage of the surf, eventually editing that with footage captured in Hawaii into material that could be further processed, downscaled, crunched, and melted by analog video equipment. By never allowing the viewer a clean perspective of the horizon, I wish to create a space of perpetual suspension between past and future identity, an unflinching view that glides from crest to trough in perpetuity. This infinite pull and sublime nature of oceanic turbulence are conflated through the transformative editing and processing that accentuate uncertainty, and that uncertainty is a part of the everyday existence of diasporic people. This is an iterative piece, and it's not complete until I'm able to film the surf in Samoa, plans which the pandemic interrupted. I see this chance occurrence and continued rupture as part of the work, and with each iteration I insert additional blank frames to signify the endured loss and barrier to my own history. This work was shown at Luggage Store Gallery in a site-specific installation overlooking Market Street, and here's some footage from the opening reception showing it in situ. The piece was visible overnight, 24 hours a day, for the entirety of the gallery, the exhibition. Just to give some context about my early work and the trajectory of my practice, in my late teens and early 20s, I was heavily involved in the experimental sound and the scenes that emerge from noise-based performances. So long-form composition, durational performance, tape music, and acousmatic sound, experimental film and video, and above all, unbearable amplification. All played a role in my guerrilla-style performances and installations in Honolulu. So during that time, I developed work for a label that I ran, Deep White Sound, and invited others to participate in. It became an archive of international experimental audio from all over the globe, created in a time that predated SoundCloud or even YouTube. So this is a sound work from that time period that exemplifies some of the cardinal ideas I hold about the treatment of media becoming a surrogate for addressing issues around the body, disability, personal narrative, authenticity, and the complications or outright failures of fidelity itself. These works made use of extensive manipulation of analog media and solidified my interest in such translations. The acoustic amplification of sound sources, randomized systems of playback that could be navigated physically, and by that I mean loops, chance operations, and physical interventions like a hand crank cassette that I built for this performance. So vulnerability alert, I was born with a congenital birth defect that was complicated by medical trauma when I was 2 years old, and as a result I have a limited lung capacity. So in this piece, the rhythmic breathing that I recorded onto tape is painful because of my body's limitations. And this performance was meant for tape. It's a type of ritual that I saw as an act of contrition and a reference to Catholicism, my Catholic upbringing, and penitence and the reconciliation of sexuality. So my body falling short not only of some sort of ideal, but also short of function itself. This one's from my Christmas album. It was a big hit. So flash forward several years, I was invited to produce a work for a space called Bronco Gallery. It's created by Emily Waub and Maggie Heath in Portland, Oregon. Bronco Gallery was a white wall gallery space installed inside of a Bronco. And previous exhibitions, people had really played with that idea and used it to kind of have this these installations that were really clean and sought to transform the Bronco from just a vehicle to a white wall gallery space. When they invited me to install, I decided, it was one of their last shows before shutting it down, so I decided that I wanted to convert it back to a vehicle. And I proposed that I would spend a weekend driving around Kauai with microphones and cameras mounted on the inside of the vehicle with my mother as we talk story. Talking story is a casual yet traditional method of oral history and knowledge transfer. The narrative that I collected veers from personal recollections, revelations, family histories, and commentary about what we were experiencing while on the road. So this material was then edited into something more abstract, with narrative lines cutting off, splintering, and looping in on itself. It was exploring a concept I refer to as dissonant ethnography, where I aim to use projection-based installation in ways that uniquely alter the perceived narrative and makes the experience not only site-specific, but viewing-specific. And it's a culmination of intentionally random coincidences with perceptual and physical filters that often realign the media as it occurs. So with this piece, there are several audio loops happening at the same time and a video loop, and they're all incongruous. They didn't line up. The interior narrative between me and my mother, and then sometimes splintering into offshoots with my grandmother, ran on one loop, and it was obliterated by random bursts of static and environmental sound that I recorded from outside of the car. So every viewing experience was unique, and that kind of obfuscation was intentionally designed so that no one would ever get the full story. Part of my practice when I'm using my family's history as material is to be mindful of the protection that I need to afford them, and to be mindful of their participation in my projects. So I want to be able to collect this data for myself, but not necessarily present it legibly for the audience. And you can hear a snippet of conversation between me and my mother from inside the car. I kind of took this concept and moved it forward with the next piece, Huli, which was developed during a 3-month residency at Open Signal, a public access television station and new media lab in Portland, Oregon, as part of their inaugural session of a new media fellowship that allowed artists time and space and resources to film in their HD studios. I knew I wanted to expand upon that notion of using the archive of oral history as material for abstraction. So using the theme of huli as a foregrounding, it's a Hawaiian word that in its common use means to flip over, but also means to investigate or to search, and is the root word to a phrase that means anthropology in Hawaiian. To huli over, especially when it comes to the body, is to flip over or to tumble, which I remember as a warning when I was a child, not to move too fast, bombai huli over. So I wanted to explore this phrase that was so consistently linked to danger, but also describes a process of discovery or starting anew. It's also when I discovered that I'm interested in matrilineal preservation, the stories, the feelings, the inventions and deviations that originated from my mother. Each of these looped scenes depict an abstracted character removed from a location and caught perpetually in reaction. I worked with a movement artist, Renee Sills, to translate real memories from my mother and my memories of my mother as a somatic performance, where I captured hours of minute gestures and movements, again as material to later be abstracted. So recently I've started taking some of these, this kind of database of gestures and movements. And so this came out in 2000, I put this out in 2017, but AI technology has advanced since then. And I've been using it, these materials as corpuses to train StyleGAN machine learning algorithms on. So what that does is instead of generating visual material from what we now see is being generated with these StyleGANs, it's only using a limited corpus, which is just the imagery from my work, and then inventing new scenes based on it. And I've been splicing it back into the film as it gets iteratively shown across in different screenings and different installations. So again, these works are iterative and change from exhibition to exhibition. You just viewed the short film version of the work. However, each vignette is meant to exist as its own closed loop. So I again explored systems of creating and viewing digital video that can be broken into components and rearranged through random access sequencing, and to build databases of material that can be shifted and recompiled. So this concept of modular cinema is applied to content, but also the delivery. In Brooklyn in 2018, I created, with a software designer at Outpost Resources, Huli software that intentionally splinters and scrambles the sequence of video playback based on random cuts. So I could create a number of different vignettes that are never repeated. They kind of just splinter off into kind of tangential realities. That concept is linked to the transreal moments in cinema, where timelines are splintered and the past and futures of characters are altered, usually triggered by traumatic events. So the transreal break is a device that I've identified in works by, particularly filmic works by indigenous filmmakers, and explained either through nonlinear storytelling, supernatural or magical manifestation, or through fantasy sequences where a character is dreaming about a different timeline or alternate outcome, and one that often arcs towards empowerment. This that's playing now is another iteration of the piece that I created with a single video monitor and short-circuited UV lights, along with some of like a repurposing of some of the language that was used, or that I recorded from the oral histories of my mother and my grandmother. Tracing the Veer is a work that was commissioned by the Honolulu Museum of Art. Again, they were interested in my use of oral histories and matrilineal oral histories to tell stories that aren't usually presented by contemporary Pacific Islander artists. And now this is into like the 5th year of using material from my grandmother and my mother, and a year after my grandmother had passed, I felt a huge responsibility to obfuscate the material as much as possible. So by doing that, I took the recordings and pushed it to its logical conclusion, which was complete annihilation. I recorded them onto tape, erased them with magnets, stretched and burned them, and then re-recorded them. And then took that material and through a series of different translations, including engraving it onto ceramics, scanning it with lasers and blowing it up. I wanted to lock this audio material as far away from legibility as possible and as far away from the audience as possible. So these structures are modular. They're basically 3D scanned and expanded prints of audio engravings that I did of my mother and my grandmother, locked forever into these kind of barriers that can be placed in different arrangements in an exhibition space. the first iteration, this is the second that was shown at MCAD in Portland, Maine. The first iteration, they were arranged as basically a circular barrier in the center of the gallery that wouldn't allow people to pass and wouldn't allow them into the optimal viewpoint for the video that played around them. So again, I'm playing with accessibility, and I'm playing with ways that people are and are not invited into this knowledge that has been passed down to me. And honestly, knowledge that may or may not be authentic itself. Like, my family lies all the time. And that is an analogy to the inheritance of gaps that I'm trying to portray. I also collaborated with several artists on the making of this. Maya Vivas, Matt Levitt, and Stephen Augustin had worked with me to create some of the materials that were then scanned or otherwise contorted to fit my view of what should be presented. Several years later, I was asked to install work as part of the AIGA conference in Portland. It was an invitation to transform a hotel room in Portland in the middle of winter into an admission-based lounge experience centering around unique cocktails and immersive art. And so they paired a visual artist with a sound artist, Amenta Abioto in my case, and a mixologist to kind of make this loungy experience for people to come and spend all night at. The theme was immediately decided, not by myself, to be tropical. And so I took that opportunity to create a spectacle-based environment with hidden meetings. The people who were visiting were essentially tourists, so it was my duty to inject a little subversion to the mix. It's also the installation where I first started to consider the wider felt dysphoria of island-based perspective and how it could instead be tied not only to the cultural severance and personal dissonance of intergenerational trauma, but also a type of hyperreal iridescence that overlays the islands and is a result perhaps of external desire. So this video work used, there's a channel in Hawaii on Oceanic Cable that just plays scenic views of Hawaii 24 hours a day. And you sometimes see it in the lobbies of hotels, but it's available in your home. Like, you can watch it yourself on television in case you forgot what Hawaii looks like outside. You can watch it all day long. So I took that footage and corrupted it in various ways, data moshed it, and then put it on the television inside of the hotel room. So this is the view of the hotel room, which to most people would just feel like a sort of trip-hoppy, like, lounge space. But I had injected a couple of things that would help to implicate the people who were visiting as part of the installation. There were live security surveillance cameras that were filming the people and then abstracting them into those shapes on the walls. There was kind of like, every now and then you can see the shadow of people walk through, and people would see their own, they would recognize that their movement or their body was being represented on either the interior of the shower glass or the adjacent wall. I knew that people would want to sit on the beds, so I propped them up at an angle on concrete pillars so that nobody could sit on them, and I wrapped them in blank military camouflage netting as like a little nod to the military presence of Hawaii. People were told that this was a tropical kind of lounge area and wholly enjoyed it, but in talking with me would end up realizing that there was something just a little amiss about what was being portrayed and how they felt in it. Also, the lighting was, it looks good in video, but in person it was really glaring and people were having a real hard time like navigating around it. And so I kind of felt that that was a way to, an entry point into this wider kind of idea about my new work. So Wave Export is a media-driven research and contemporary art project interrogating how the infrastructure of media intersects with the production of colonial fantasy projected onto the Pacific Island nations. And these systems create zones of concentrated attention that often feed back onto themselves, materializing in ways that defy detection and mutate to serve as import and export out of the Pacific. I'm interested in gathering materials as evidence of these projections and insight into technological shifts that power their transmissions, as well as broader signs of distortions that arise from mass attention itself. Historically, the film, travel, music, and military-industrial complex have intersected to manufacture and perpetuate hyperreal stereotypes of exotic and paradisical landscapes and unreal cultures of hospitality projected onto the Pacific Islands. It's these kinds of fantasies that are so pervasive that I actually found myself during COVID, when I wasn't able to go back home, I found myself accessing them in a real nostalgic way. And I think it's kind of the same for many people who are diasporic and aren't able to return to their island homes. You start to remember or imagine it through the mechanisms that are available to you. And I found myself on Google Earth a lot, like kind of zooming around, looking at Google like Street View and using technology to go backwards into some place that may or may not exist anymore, or maybe never has. The Pacific Islands have long served as a locus for Western fantasies about exoticism, framed through the lenses of luxury, escapism, and idyllic paradise. This portrayal has been significantly shaped by the film industry, which has presented Hawaii, and by extension other Pacific Islands, as the ultimate destination for glamour and celebrity. Such representations play a crucial role in feeding the mechanics of the tourism industry in the 1900s and through 1930s, initially sparked by the advent of ocean liners and subsequently fortified by the expansion of air travel. So this creates a loop where cinematic depictions of the islands as pristine, leisure-filled escapes drive tourism, which in turn fuels more films set against these backdrops and perpetuates the island's images as places of desire and dream fulfillment. In the documentary Cave Fire by Anthony Banua Simon, a more critical narrative comes through, highlighting how Hollywood, alongside the travel and agricultural industries and the U.S. military, conspired to literally craft and solidify these fantasies as a way to obfuscate labor issues that were arising at local pineapple and sugar plantations. So this manufactured paradise not only diverted attention from the struggles of labor activists who were advocating against injustices, but also solidified Hawaii's image in the global consciousness as a premier tourist destination and location for film production. Thus, the export of desire through these portrayals have had profound implications, undermining local power dynamics and prioritizing commercial gains over, authentic representations of locals. The military's complicit nature in all of this is well documented, and the presence of it is well examined. The subject it's the subject of decades of activism, criticism, and resistance. I was thinking about this and the years of transgressions that have taken place and how we interact with violence that's abstracted and obfuscated with time and relegated to historical archives. This work, I'm going to turn up the sound just a little. This piece is tangential to a larger media project that I'm doing, examining the infrastructure of media around the Pacific Islands. This video is displayed on a cathode ray television and consists of archival footage of nuclear testing at Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands that's been altered by custom software. in Max MSP to slow playback to a crawl, scrubbing through the video several frames at a time before starting over in imperfect cycles that eventually converts the entire document to a slow-moving landscape. The recent advent of large language models, such as GPT-4, have been likened to the advent of nuclear technology in regards to its impact on human culture. And I'm thinking about the time prior, during, and after the development of technology too large to be handled correctly. So I'm alluding here to the warping effects that technology's advancement have had on our conceptualization of self and our sense of global responsibility and the ways that these advancements mark historical time. The use of anachronistic juxtaposition, so a cathode ray television depicting an animation only seen in streaming media, is a form of indexical sabotage and nods to the complexity of media infrastructure and how their constructions shape and contextualize problematic histories. As always, I'm also interested in just drawing general attention to the fragility of the Pacific Island nations, whether or not it's due to encroaching sea level rise, criminal militaristic occupation, or predatory economic systems that feed on projected fantasy. The sound you hear is a recording of the late artist Israel Kamakawiwa Ole performing a classic song, White Sandy Beach, which too has been rendered illegible by the structure of media playback in the software. Of course, the ocean is not just a theater for military flexing. Oh, here's the installation view. And a little bit of the software that created it. The ocean is not just a theater for military flexing and demonstration of might. It's also a connective tissue. It's a network. In our Sea of Islands, a seminal text by Fijian writer Epeli Hau'ofa, he invites us to reimagine Oceania through a lens of interconnectedness, strength, and vast potential. He challenges the imposed narratives of smallness and dependency. He points to centuries-old maritime heritage, cultural depth, and the enduring agency of Pacific Islanders. He paints a picture of a region not confined by physical boundaries of its islands, but expanded by the roots of its seafarers and the spread of its people. This perspective not only critiques the reductionist views of external powers, but also calls for a reclamation of identity by Oceanians themselves. His vision is one of a vibrant and dynamic sea of islands, a place of possibility, connection, and mutual support. The ocean is not only a technology that has been utilized for centuries by Pacific Islanders for navigation, survivance, and cosmological understanding, but it's very literally an environment that houses the infrastructure of media and information that the globe relies on, which is the internet. I'm interested in how this infrastructure makes use of repeaters. Repeaters are technological transmission aids that are required to boost the signal of information as it travels long distances across the ocean floor. And repeaters give me a sense of generation loss, the copy of a copy that hastens illegibility and abstraction, because Xerox copy of a Xerox copy where information is slowly lost. The introduction of noise, however minimal, with these repeaters mimics the repetitions of storytelling and oral histories that are so vital to the Pacific region, and it's a physical metaphor that encourages me in my attempts to use abstraction as an analogy to these processes. Perhaps these small distortions can offer a true escape that people so routinely ascribe to the Pacific region, which has long been conceptualized as a place to hide, a place where escape is the ultimate privilege, a wide barrier between you and the rest of the world that causes all of your problems. This is the colonial and modern libertarian ideals that drive most of the controversial development in the region today. One example of this development is found in the desire for Pacific-based crypto havens and blockchain ubiquity. So this is footage of Satoshi Island, which is an ambitious development project designed to create a unique community for cryptocurrency enthusiasts on an 800-acre island in Vanuatu in the South Pacific. So it envisions a blend of physical and digital ecosystem governed by blockchain principles and emphasizing sustainability and modern eco-friendly living. It's designed to be a hub for the global cryptocurrency community, and its project's founders envision it as a place where people can live, work, and visit, all within an ecosystem powered by blockchain. Properties on Satoshi Island are planned to be sold as NFTs, ensuring secure, transparent, and immutable records of ownership via blockchain technology. Architectural plans include modular homes that can be customized to meet residents' needs, incorporate smart technology and automation for efficient living. These islands aim to feature community facilities, commercial areas, and spaces conducive to permanent residents and visitors, such as conference centers and recreational areas. I was also surprised to find that the CIA themselves have sponsored blockchain and crypto workshops in the South Pacific, all along the South Pacific, since 2016 and 2017. So I think we tend to think about this rampant crypto development as like a pandemic era and private endeavor, but it's much more nefarious than that. And they're actively trying to convert many different economies in the South Pacific officially to blockchain. The Tuvalu Foreign Minister Simon Kofe also engaged with the metaverse and virtuality in his speech to COP27. This was half an attempt to archive a threatened culture, homeland, and vulnerable ecological system of atolls, but it's also a way to utilize the infrastructure of media and attention to bring awareness and address a problem using cutting-edge technology such as LiDAR scans and mixed reality environments in order to leverage tech industry interest in virtual technologies as consumer products. So Tuvalu announced their intention because they are part of the most vulnerable islands, the islands most vulnerable to climate change. And because of the global unwillingness to address these issues in any meaningful way to stave off the effects, they declared that they were going to slowly convert the entire island and all of its culture to to scanning it and entering it into the metaverse to create a digital twin and a digital copy, so that when the island is lost, their culture lives on. Pacific Islanders are once again compelled to engage with external fantasy and incorporate it as a method of survivance, this time not engaging with hyperreal caricatures of exotic hospitality or paradisical lifestyles, but rather a specific brand of apocalyptic techno-solutionism that we can potentially be saved from ourselves by conversion to the virtual and a translation of existing cultures to a multiplayer game that splinters us from the physical degradation and abuses we're prone to. Of course, this networking is made possible by the miles of fiber optic cables that crisscross the Pacific Ocean floor. So where does that leave us? How to possibly address these and other facets of collective dreaming about the Pacific region in a way that doesn't feel prescriptive or definitive and reflects the complexities of navigating such a hyperobject, an unreality that inevitably becomes our lived environment. I have to mention that the sounds you've been hearing played behind some of the research materials I edited together are excerpts of a piece that I recently completed. It was commissioned by Third Angle Music in Portland, Oregon. It was conceived of as a 40-minute sound ride inspired by the sustained yearning to revisit my homes in Kahaluu and Portland, Oregon after I moved to the East Coast during the COVID lockdown, a longing which over time became its own interior landscape to traverse. I was thinking about ways in which we ache for the return of places and people from the past, and when they do return, we discover what was true about them then may not be true any longer. So spatio-temporal displacement, transitional spaces, and desire to return to which that may no longer be familiar to us serve as points of departure for this audio experience I designed to trace the path of the MAX Red Line from the urban center of Portland to the Portland International Airport as a kind of embodied conversion of the present into past and experience into memory. These vignettes that have been playing consist of overlapping synthetic sounds, sonic fabrications and manipulations based on daydreams, half-memories, contradictory language, and little phrases I used in collaboration with audio latent diffusion models, otherwise audio style GAN, that were trained on open source audio libraries. I call these results, which are these tiny clips of low quality, crunchy bits of noisy, illegible audio, non-sounds, and I use them as waveform samples for digital instruments for this composition. They were all based on fragments of language that either came from the oral histories that I collected or kind of dream logic of different regions, different things I had remembered from my former life in the islands, and like other kind of poetic phrases. Moving forward with this project, I'm assembling a database of using Google Earth. I'm using Google Earth to assemble a database of snapshots of every Pacific island, as defined by a public data set that I found from researchers in Australia. So who knows if that's real? A lot of it's mislabeled, but I see that failure of completeness or that failure of authenticity to be something that I'm interested in too. So it's 1,778 islands that I'm photographing via Google Earth, and then using similar methods of distortion and extraction, loading them into StyleGAN software to then create different forms of fantasy islands that can be used as material in different physical and virtual realms. And that's what I hope to achieve here at the IEA. Thank you for listening to my talk. And I will answer any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.